There were maybe 40 people at the funeral. Not a small life, just a quiet one. A few neighbors. Some men from the shop where he worked for 31 years. A niece who flew in. And near the front, his son, who kept apologizing to people for the size of the room, as if the turnout were a grade he'd been given. Everyone there thought roughly the same thing, and nobody said it out loud. He didn't have much. You could see why they'd think it. The car in the lot outside was 14 years old. The house they'd all driven past on the way in was the same modest one he'd bought in his 30s and never traded up from. He wore the same gray jacket to every occasion that required a jacket. When he retired, there was no party. He just stopped showing up on a Friday, and that was that. So the room had already made up its mind about him. Kind man. Simple life. Not much to show for it. The will was read 11 days later. Let's go back, because the ending only means something if you understand the 50 years in front of it. He started at the shop at 22. Not a career, a job. It paid what jobs like that paid, which was never a lot and never nothing. He did that same work for 3 decades, and by every measure the world uses, he never got ahead. No promotion anyone would frame. No title. No moment where his income jumped and changed the shape of his life. And here's the thing everyone missed. His income never had to change shape. Because his life never did. He bought the house when he was 34, and it was smaller than what he could have gotten approved for. The bank offered him more. He said no. His wife asked him once, early on, if he wanted to look at the newer development on the other side of town, bigger rooms, nicer street. He said the one they had was already more than he grew up with. And that was the end of the conversation. They stayed 41 years. He kept cars until they stopped. Not out of stubbornness, he just genuinely could not locate the part of himself that was supposed to want a new one. When people at the shop upgraded and pulled into the lot wanting someone to notice, he noticed. He'd walk over and say something nice about it and mean it. Then he'd get into his own and drive home. That's the part that matters, actually. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't performing restraint. He just wanted less than the people around him, and he never once needed anyone to know that. Quick thing before the part where the envelope gets opened, because what's inside it changes how you see every one of those small choices. If you like stories about what money actually looks like when nobody's watching, that's this whole channel. Money Lens. Hit subscribe and stay with me. The last 2 minutes are the reason I wanted to tell you this. So what was he doing if he wasn't spending? Nothing clever. That's what makes it hard to believe. Every time the shop gave him a raise in over 31 years, there were a handful his life stayed the same size. And the difference went into an account he opened in his 20s and almost never looked at. He wasn't timing anything. He wasn't picking winners. He put money into simple, ordinary things that grow slowly. And then he did the only genuinely difficult part. He left it there. Through the years, it barely moved. Through the years, it went backwards. Through the 2 or 3 moments in a lifetime when everyone around you is certain the whole thing is finished. He didn't touch it. Not because he was brave, because he'd stopped thinking of it as money he had. He thought of it as money that was already gone spent, in advance, on something he hadn't decided yet. And here's the mechanic underneath the whole story, the part with no drama in it at all. He was never trying to get rich. He was just never in a hurry, and he lived below what he earned for 50 consecutive years, and time did the rest. Time is patient in a way people aren't. Give it enough decades and a small gap, and it will hand you a number that makes no sense next to a 14-year-old car. Now the 11 days later part. His son sat in a small office and listened to a man in a cheap tie read out a figure, and then read it again, because the son asked him to. It was more money than the son had ever thought about at one time, enough to change the direction of 2 households permanently. And it had been sitting there, quietly. The entire time, through every year, the son had quietly worried about his father. Through the Christmas he'd offered to help with a bill, and his father had gently said no. Through all 40 of those chairs at the funeral, where everyone was thinking he didn't have much. The son cried in the parking lot. And when he tried to explain it later, he said it wasn't about the money. It was that his father had known this the whole time and had said nothing to anyone for 50 years. There was a note with the paperwork. Short, it didn't explain the amount or apologize for the secret. It just said what he wanted it used for the grandchildren's education and a specific repair on the house he'd been putting off, and then one line at the end, which the son has never repeated to anyone except his wife. So why did he keep it quiet? That's the question everyone asks, and it's the wrong one. Because keeping it quiet implies there was a thing he was hiding. There wasn't. He wasn't concealing wealth. He was just living a life he actually liked, and the money was a byproduct of that life, not the point of it. The plain house wasn't a sacrifice. He liked that house. The old car wasn't discipline. He didn't want a new one. There was no gritted teeth anywhere in this story. That's what people get wrong when they hear it. They imagine 50 years of a man saying no to himself. That isn't what happened. He said yes, constantly, to a very small set of things. That house, that street, those people, that Saturday routine he had. And the money piled up in the space where everyone else keeps their upgrades. And there's something else, quieter. He understood something most people never test, that once people know your number, they never look at you the same way again. The moment the room knows, you stop being a man and start being an amount. He liked being a man at that shop. He liked his neighbors treating him like a neighbor. That was worth more to him than being admired, and he made that trade every single day for 5 decades without ever mentioning it. Here's what I actually want you to take from this. You have almost certainly been at a table with someone like him, someone you've quietly filed under, doing okay. Probably not much. You made that assessment from a car, a jacket, a modest house, a job that didn't sound impressive when they described it. It took you about 4 seconds, and you've never revisited it. You might be right. Most of the time, you probably are. But the ones who aren't the quiet ones sitting on something will never correct you. That's the entire mechanism. They decided a long time ago that being underestimated was more comfortable than being known. And the fact that it works on you completely is exactly the proof that it works. 40 people sat in that room and got him wrong. Not because they were foolish, because he'd spent 50 years making sure that was the easiest possible conclusion to reach. The richest person at the funeral was in the box at the front of the room, and nobody in that room had ever once suspected it, which is, I think, exactly how he wanted to be remembered, right up until 11 days later, when he finally let them find out. This is Money Lens. We show you what the money world doesn't say out loud.